Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible to all of you all. Thank you so much for your patience. I was nervous before I came here. Now that I have seen all of you all and I have heard Madhavan sir's introduction to TK sir, and I've heard him say that this is a very sparse academic talk, I'm absolutely terrified. Because why you would invite a Bollywood actor to an academic talk is something that absolutely evades my comprehension. It's a great honor to be here. I did not have the good fortune of ever meeting TK Ramachandranji, but from what I hear from Madhavan sir, I think I would have been a fan. You know, if he hadn't passed away in 2008, I think he would have been crowned the king of anti-nationals by our Godi media channels, looking at how sort of things have progressed for us. And it's interesting to hear that he had actually called it way before we perhaps even imagined that a time like this would be possible in India. I'm also struck by the fact that you said that he was considered a fearmonger and an alarmist. Because, you know, the funny thing is that most people in India are still either deaf to the alarm bells that are ringing all around us, or they are, you know, all the alarm bells for them are in fact the din of celebration. And since TK sir was a professor of literature and a teacher as well, it's only fit to quote Yeats, also because I have to justify my presence here. We are, after all, living in a time, you know, where the best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. So what then of art? Oh, sorry, before I go on, I would like to thank Madhavan sir and the whole Friends of TK team for having me here, and everyone who has sort of put together resources, time, energy and effort to host me here. You all have been very, very hospitable and very generous, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful, and I'm very, very honored to be here, and it's a privilege that I perhaps don't deserve, but now I'm here. I've also set an alarm because I talk a lot. So I don't, and I have not been given a time limit. So just wave when you want me to go away and I'll stop. Or better yet, come and shove me off stage and start and take the mic yourself. I am completely all right with either of those things. So at a time like this, what of art? What of the artist? And what really remains of the citizen? I didn't want this to be a rant about my Bollywood career, which I have set on fire myself, though God knows I really deserve a rant at this point, so I decided to pen down some thoughts. The thoughts are now 10 pages of scribbles that I can't understand. So I'm just going to go with my experience and share that with you. The process of becoming an artist and the realization that I am a citizen, both these things were gloriously, you know, both journeys were gloriously ignorant and unself-conscious ones for me. I've always thought that we think of ourselves in the way in which our immediate surrounding teaches us to think of ourselves. So I always knew I was a difficult daughter, because my parents made that abundantly clear to me. I knew I was a bad student because my teachers made that very clear to me. But the birth of the idea that I'm a citizen actually took place before I even knew what the word citizen was. Bear with me while I tell you a small anecdote from my childhood. My father retired from the Indian Navy. So when we were little, we stayed in accommodation, government accommodation that housed armed forces officers and their families, so Army, Navy, Air Force. This was on Copernicus Marg. For all of you who are familiar, if anyone is familiar with Delhi, it's a lovely place to be growing up, right in Lutyens, Delhi. And it was a multi-storied apartment complex. It had 3 buildings. And I was there from the age of 5 to 20. And when I was around 11, 12, I think, we were studying the national movement. We had a small section on international world history. And I was a big Bollywood fan. So I used to keep watching the films that would come on Doordarshan. And I'd only recently seen an Amitabh Bachchan starrer called Mard. I don't know if any of you have seen it. And it has a famous scene where he's a Tonga driver and he spots outside, it's set apparently in the British times, and he sees outside a club a sign that says Indians and dogs not allowed. And then of course he's Amitabh Bachchan, so he makes his dog get inside the pool. And I was like very impressed by this scene, obviously. And then of course we were reading the national movement, so I knew all about Ghulam Desh and all that. And I came home one day from our playing hours, and I saw that on the lift of the in the buildings, there were 2 lifts. One elevator said officers and their families only, and the other said servants, batmen, and staff. So I felt very upset. I was like, this is just like that club scene in Mard. And I had also learnt about apartheid. I had somehow learnt the word apartheid in South Africa. So I was full of very sort of righteous rage. And I went to my father and I said, Papa, you know, this is very unfair. So he said, what happened? So I told him that there are 2 lifts in this building, and it's just like, you know, how Indians and dogs were not allowed when we were a Ghulam Desh, and now look at what is happening in our own society. So my father said, all right, well, why don't you do something about it? And I had not thought that something could ever be done about things. So I decided that, and then he also gave me a lecture on Gandhi. So I decided to start my own elevator civil disobedience movement. So I would hang around the officer's elevator and I would bring it on the ground floor, and I would stand there like the elevator doorman. And every time a servant, which is the house helps, or a staff, a batman was, you know, passing by, I'd be like, aye, please come in. And I would try to take them in that elevator. This went on for a few days until some officer who was a little grumpy caught me and gave both me and that poor unsuspecting domestic help a real jhad. And then the domestic help glared at me because it was really my idea and my fault, and they went away. So my little civil disobedience movement failed. So I went back to my father and I said, Dad, this is, you know, I got into trouble and all. So my father said, why don't you start a petition? And why don't you write a letter and get all the children of the neighborhood to sign it and submit it to the secretary of our building, who was a brigadier in the army. So I wrote a letter. I took out my mother was also a teacher, so I took her attendance register and I wrote a letter. And then I went downstairs in my playing time and I showed the letter to all my friends, and everyone refused to sign it. So then I signed it and I forged my brother's signature, and I took that letter to the secretary of the building. And I said, sir, this is the letter, uncle. And he didn't know me, but he recognized my father and his rank. So I suppose he entertained me. And he said, yes, so. I said, uncle, there is, you know, there are 2 elevators and it's very unfair. So he said, what is unfair? So I said, it's inequality. So he said, how is it inequality? There is 1 lift for the officers and there's 1 lift for the servants. It's equal. So I was not prepared for this sort of bland, cruel logic. And I said, but I didn't know what to say. So I said, but that lift is not clean. The servant's lift is not clean. So he said, well, tell them to clean it. So I said, and then he slammed the door in my face. Then I decided to try and get people to clean the lift. Anyway, the long and short is that nobody cleaned the lift. I tried doing it one day. It was a task that I just, you know, my upper middle class sensibilities just could not bear it, and the whole thing was a huge failure. But I came away from that incident with the words my father had said to me throughout, which was, why don't you do something about it? And I think without realizing it, it sort of laid the seed of the idea that the citizen is not a passive thing. The citizen is an active agent. I studied literature and in my BA in Miranda House in Delhi University, and I went to JNU to study my master's in sociology, and I was very blessed to have very wonderful progressive department, and I think that everyone here is a testimony to the transformative power a good teacher can have in the life of a student. My mother is a teacher, and I have seen that in my own life with all the students whose lives she has touched. And I think that the most precious gift that teacher figures can grant us in our life is discernment. And when I say discernment, what I mean is it is the ability to arrive at an idea of what is right and what is wrong, unsupported by religion, the dominant morality of the day, elders of the family, tradition, maybe even law, and the mob. And I think that this unsupported discerning judgment is something that is fast disappearing in India. I remember an incident that happened in Mumbai with me in a local train. And I'm not sharing these incidents out of any kind of hubris or arrogance. I'm just trying to share with you how I never understood in a self-conscious way what it meant to be a citizen in an everyday sort of sense until I was made to realize it, because I was made to pay a price for it. I was in Mumbai in the local train, and the Mumbai blast and the terror attack had just happened about a month ago. And so, it had been a huge thing, obviously, in a very tragic, devastating incident for everyone. And Bombay was sort of limping back to normal as the trains had just started. And I was coming home. I used to live in Goregaon, and it was my first year in Bombay. I was like a struggler, which I kind of still am. But I was a struggler, and I was coming in the first class compartment, general first class compartment, for anyone who's aware of the Mumbai locals. It's where men and women can both go, but it's the first class, so it's basically a little less crowded, nothing else. And I'm sitting there, and I looked up, and I saw on the wall of the train on the other side, it was written in a marker, "Muslims of India are traitors and terrorists, kill these pigs." And I was very shocked. This was 2008, remember, so we did not have the Dharam Sansads and the Yati Narasinghanans and all these self-proclaimed Babas who come and spew filth and hate and talk openly of murder and rape. This was not that time. And I was quite shocked, because at that time we were not used to hate speech being so normal. I looked around, and no one seemed to notice, no one seemed to care. But I felt very uncomfortable, and it was a long journey, and I kept staring at that. And finally I decided that, well, I must do something about it. So I looked in my bag, and of course, like a good actor, the only thing I had in my bag was a lipstick. So I took that lipstick out, and I crossed out the sort of what was written, and I wrote, "Long live secularism." And it was very funny. One boy sitting next to me was like, "Excuse me, madam, you have missed the R." So I said, "Oh, sorry." So I corrected that. And then I turned around, and when I was walking to get off, and I saw that the other side had the same thing written, and now my lipstick was half over, but I still crossed it out, and I said, "No to hate." And a gentleman saw me, and he got very angry, and he started shouting at me, and saying in Hindi that, you all are the kind of people, and it's because of people like you that terrorists come to our country and this, that. And I kind of started trying to fight with him myself. And I was quite surprised, because I had never really confronted this kind of a discourse or being challenged like this in public. And he told me, "You're destroying public property." And I was like, oh, wow. I love how the discourse of, public administration and sort of taking care of public property comes in to defend hate. So, of course, I was much younger and didn't really necessarily know the whole language, so I tried to sort of fight with him. And suddenly I realized that I was the only girl in that whole compartment. And then, of course, a crowd had come. And nothing happened. The man shouted at me. Some other people also tried to talk. And then finally my thing came, and I made my way and I got off. But I was very, very shaken, because I had not realized that would be sort of, that was actually a sign of where we would be heading. And incidents like these, this was nothing in comparison to the form the mob has taken ever since. that this was just sort of almost an awning of what was going to happen. So this was the kind of mindset with which I arrived in Bollywood, and I didn't know the rules. I was an outsider. I didn't realize the distinction. I was, imagine irony of ironies, I was forced to get onto Twitter by my PR after a film of mine released in 2013, and she said to me that, y'all must all be on, all actors are on social media to interact with their fans. She had no idea what Frankenstein's monster she was giving birth to, and to date, she rules the date. I started following all the news channels and so on, and I thought it's a platform where in 70 or 140 characters you can express what you want. Then comes 2014, and Narendra Modi came to power with a huge landslide victory. And I was I think in school when 2002 happened, and I had been part of students, volunteers who had gone to Gujarat to volunteer in the relief camps. We did no real work, but we were there for 2 months in our summer vacation. And so I saw the news and I posted 2 tweets. It's the image of that man from the Gujarat riots folding his hands. And one tweet I wrote was, amid the fanfare, there's a face I can't forget. Like 1984, once again, we proved that in India, you can get away with murder, shame. This was posted on 16th May 2014. And the second tweet was, #interesting fact of history, Nazi party was voted into power by a democratic process by the German people. Yes, numbers don't make wrongs right. Every Greek tragedy has one cardinal mistake that the protagonist makes. This was mine. I never lived down these tweets. Of course, I must admit that I didn't try to, and in fact, if anything, I only got more and more provoked. I want to quickly take you through my journey on social media, because what happened was that unwittingly, my persona as an artist got entangled with my social media presence, where I thought I was reacting as a citizen, but it seemed like I was sort of a Modi hater, and as a result, one set of people called me an activist, another set of people called me anti-India, anti-Hindu, and so on. And that is a typical, I'm really sorry, there are older people here, so I think I may not be able to share all the slides, but vaguely speaking, this is the kind of messages I receive regularly. As my film started releasing and I wanted to kind of use my platform to participate or make a comment on what was happening around us, raise my voice. This is a placard campaign that we did when the Kathua gang rape of that 8-year-old child happened. And this was the first group of actresses who shared those images, and it went viral, and then a lot of people did it. That's the kind of response that I got. The Hindu right wing basically started targeting the paid campaigns and the paid endorsements that I was doing with brands. So they began very quickly to realize that the way to target actors is to target them economically. Then of course Amazon removed the tweet, then there was a huge halla about it. This is some tweets that show the participation in the CNRC protests. And I've also, I must admit, received a lot of support on Twitter, and I have made a community of friends on Twitter, and I continue to do so. I hope. I met Anna, not only because of Twitter, but we became friends because of Twitter. This is another thing that began to happen, which is that multiple people began to file criminal complaints in efforts to turn them into FIRs, saying that my tweets had hurt the religious sentiments of the Hindu community, or that that in some way my speeches or something that I had said in the CNRC protest had led to the Delhi riots. So, which is the same charge in which Omar Khalid is in jail, Khalid Saifi is in jail, all those activists and students are in jail. They tried to put the same kind of complaint on me as well, and even now there are perhaps more than 25 criminal complaints in various police stations in India on this. Every 2-3 months, hashtag arrest Swara Bhasker starts trending. Some days I don't even know why. Sometimes I don't even know what I've said. Sometimes friends just send me the hashtag being like, hi, good morning, what did you do today? And I'm like, no, I have no idea. Let me check. But this arrest Swara Bhasker has become a regular, a few months kind of feature on Twitter. The other thing that they do regularly is fake photoshopping of, I mean, it's very easy, right? You just put our faces on any app and then you write anything underneath. And where it's fake, and fact checkers and Zubair and Alt News and all of them have even fact checked some of these. Here again, fake quotes attributed to me. Oh, this one is amazing. Look at the artwork and the creativity of, and this is not just on the internet. These are also WhatsApp blasts. So sometimes I've had situations where extended family has sent me back some of these images being like, what is this? And what do you say? These are just blasted on WhatsApp. Now, this is again more kind of, you know, incriminating, within quotes, evidence of the fact that I'm an anti-Hindu, anti-national. The effort really is to discredit the artist, right? As actors, our job is to be liked by the audience, to be liked by all of y'all. When you watch our films, you should feel a connection to us. That's how actors, our careers grow. That's how our stardom grows. That's how our business grows. The easiest way to take that away from an actor and to harm their work is to make them unlikable and to plant a suspicion in the audience's mind that this person is not to be trusted, they are not credible, they are of ill repute. And you can do it in a variety of ways. With women, of course, the first is that person has a loose character, therefore all the slut-shaming comments, or that they're in India now, that they're anti-national, anti-Hindu, and so on. I'm just trying to give you a sense of what has happened, or what my experience on social media has been as a result of trying to engage with what is happening around us. Every time my show comes out, any show on any platform, there will be thousands of accounts that will go on to IMDb, which is a rating platform, and they will en masse rate it 0. As you can see, and they're so amazing, they're even saying that no need to watch this one to review. They've given a 0 without watching. Now, the thing is that nobody's actually reading the reviews. What starts to happen is that the ratings start to fall. So other viewers who are trying to search for the show will see the IMDb rating and will be like, no, this is a bad show. So again, a way to sort of target your employability, which is that the celebrity speaks out and without realizing becomes an activist simply because they are giving their opinion or being frank about what they feel. They become an activist without realizing. They keep speaking out, and activists who speak out kind of become a celebrity. And at the center of this whole maze is the social media and the smartphone. What Madhavan sir was saying was not available at the time when TK sir was making his own thoughts. So it's very interesting to see what social media has done to our idea of not just celebritydom, but to us at artists, and how it has turned artists into activists without us necessarily even realizing or having really done very much. I don't necessarily deserve to be called an activist. I also only began to think about this question of being an artist once people, because of this whole experience and the fact that my work was getting targeted so viciously, and I was beginning to lose brand endorsements, I was beginning to lose, which I have continued to lose and do not at this point have, where I was losing films, where I was either being called for a film and then not called again, so losing work steadily, and where people and well-wishers from the industry kept calling me up, and people who were on my team, my PR agent, my managers, and saying, you know, why are you doing this? Like, why can't you stop? What will change if you just shut up and just leave Twitter? It's a question I still don't necessarily have the answer of. And the other question, which is of course a journalist's favorite, which is that if there is one thing you regret or one thing you change about yourself or a decision that you had taken in the past, what would that be? I think about it often. Why, as an artist, do we have to speak out? And a dialogue from the film Dirty Picture, if any of you have seen it. It's a Hindi film which was inspired from the life of Silk Smitha, starring Vidya Balan that came out, and it has a dialogue. It's a scene where someone asks Vidya's character something, and she says, films are just entertainment, entertainment, entertainment. And it was a huge hit, this dialogue. When it came in the theaters, everyone clapped. And I have since thought that that dialogue actually points to the painfully limited understanding of art that we as a society have come to accept, and the painfully limited understanding of films and stories that we as a society have come to accept quite unthinkingly. I don't need to say this to you. I'm just saying it to you. I'm just saying it because I've realized that art has the power to transform. Good art, thought-provoking, sensitive art, and when I mean art, I'm at this moment talking about cinematic art, which is really my field, like stories, like good literature, can create empathy. It has the power to do that which the intellect cannot, because a moving story will touch your heart. It does not go through your brain, it goes straight to your heart. Your eyes see it. That's why the visual medium is so powerful. Your eyes see it, and it goes straight to your soul, right? So art has a hugely transformative power. Maybe not immediately, maybe it will not solve the problems of the world tomorrow, but if at the end of a play or a poetry reading session or a film, one person leaves the audience with one new question in their head, or one new thought in their head, or one doubt about something that they always believed to be the absolute truth, then that transformation is already happening, right? And linked to this question, or linked to this issue of the transformative power of art, is my question then, that is that the reason why the artist and art, free art, is such a threat to any authoritarian controlling state? Because art is also unpredictable, right? There is no controlling how something I have done will be interpreted by the audience, or what meaning the audience will make of it. I think Roland Barthes has a thesis about play, and about how the viewer and the ones who receive the piece of art or the performance will play with it, right? There is a beautiful intangible component to art which cannot be defined, which cannot be controlled, which cannot be predicted. And this is universal. This applies to all kinds of art. Our Natya Shastras, when they talk about ras and the creation of ras as being the ultimate aim of all art, this is the intangible that they are talking about, right? World over, authoritarian states have feared free art and free artistic expression, and they have tried to control it. And and there are examples of this from across the world. So given that this is the power of art, given that this is the effect of art, and given the fact that the artist, that the state understands that, why then should the artist be a citizen, or embrace their role of being a citizen and engage with the world that they live in? I think Michel Foucault had an essay where he talks about the role of the author as being someone whose job is to interpret, to challenge, to counter, to create, and to engage with discourse. And when he said discourse, he meant the discourse of the powerful. He talked about how art occupies the intersection of time and space. All art is influenced by the time and space in which it was created. Well, so is the artist. When people ask me, why do you do it? Why do you keep engaging with what happens around you? Why can't you ignore it? I have a very simple response. I am an actor. My job is to be the medium for stories that involve this world, the world I live in, the language, the world where everyone speaks the language that I work in. I have to become the people. All performers have to become the people. Whether it is the people in mythology, whether it is the people in realistic films and realistic cinema or art cinema or international films. How could I have played the role of a maid in my film Nilbate Sannata if I don't care that my maid's house gets flooded every monsoon in Bombay? What justice am I going to do if that thought doesn't cross my mind? What justice am I going to do when I play the role of a maid? I will not. I cannot. Because there cannot be any performance that does not begin with empathy for the character that you are playing. How can I play the role of Anarkali of Ara, which is a film I did about a dancing girl who gets molested on stage, if I ignore the fact that the rate of gang rapes are, or at least the reported rate of gang rapes are going through the roof in India, or that an 8-year-old child was kidnapped and gang raped, or that a girl in Unnao burnt herself in protest because no law enforcement authority was willing to even take on record her complaint that she had been raped by an MLA. How can I play a character who has suffered sexual harassment if I want to blind myself to sexual harassment around me? Similarly, how does any actor in India today play a Muslim character without sparing one thought for what the implication of the CAA amendment and the NRC plan would be for the minorities of this country? How can we, as actors, how can we do our jobs if we don't have empathy and engagement with the world around us? And when we have empathy for the world around us, we will ensure that we deliver performances that will make you as the audience have empathy for those people. And that is the most frightening thing about an artist for an authoritarian state that needs to control how the population feels. Any successful authoritarian state has only been able to last forever and ever by playing with and controlling the emotions of the population. And we are in the middle of one of the most successful such experiments of our time in India today. So whether we understand or don't understand the power and the danger of art and the artist, I can rest assure you that the state certainly does. And that is how propaganda is born. And that is how propaganda or propaganda in art and the use of art, films, cinema, songs, skits, to spread the message of the powerful is born, because no one understands the soft power of art more than the state. The Soviet Union did it, the USA did it, and now India is doing it. If you look at, I don't want to comment on Malayalam cinema because I don't watch it enough and I don't know the trend. I know that the Indian language cinemas are doing some fantastic work. I can tell you Bollywood's experience. Bollywood's experience is that our central government has understood, finally, the power of Bollywood, and it has moved very smartly, very swiftly by a variety of sort of changes in rules, changes in laws, sort of giving patronage to certain kinds of filmmakers and certain kinds of artists, and patronizing a certain kind of film, sometimes doing PR for those kinds of films, and having their own supporters even put money into a certain kind of film being told, so that cinematic art in the Hindi language can begin to serve the project of Hindutva. I've said it. That's literally what is happening. You look at any historical film that is being made in Bollywood, and you will think that that script is parroting, and you will realize that that script is parroting the revisionist project of Nagpur, where suddenly all medieval kings are like these, you know, awful villains, and I mean, you know what that narrative is. And so, because the authoritarian, controlling, almost fascist state anywhere in the world understands the power of art and will control it or try to control it willy-nilly, that is why art must engage and the artist must engage. Because if we don't, the state will make us engage according to their project and for their motivation. And we may not even realize that we are serving their narrative. I can tell you, I just want to give one small example about how thoughtless this can actually be, which is that, do you remember that incident in Kashmir where an army officer put, it was a big hue and cry about it, a Major Gogoi had used a shepherd as a human shield in some case, and there was a huge hue and cry about it, and some right-wingers even celebrated it, and there was people printing t-shirts about it, and some people saying that Arundhati Roy should be used as a human shield, and you know, the usual kind of very venal discourse. Within 6 months, there was a Hindi film, I think it was Baghi, 1 or 2, I don't remember, that had a similar scene. An army officer using a Kashmiri person as a human shield in the film. The filmmakers must have just put it for claps, for the drama, you know. But that film then, the dehumanization of the Kashmiri civilian that leads to, and then you come to 8 years later or 5 years later, Kashmir Files, and the kind of response that Kashmir Files generated in audiences at the end of the film, where there were people getting up and shouting slogans that were basically very, very hateful. So we may think that we are just putting a scene and we're just being unconscious about it, and we didn't actually think so much, but we, in all likelihood, are getting used for a purpose that may not necessarily even be ours. Artists, other actors, colleagues of mine, directors, say to me and ask me all the time, and they say, don't do politics. You know, don't do politics. Let your art speak for itself. Let your work speak for itself. Politics is not your job. Yes, politics is not my job. It's also not my choice. Politics is my majboori. Let me translate that Hindi word. Politics is my helplessness. Majboori is not helplessness, it's helpless choice. It's a choice, Compulsion, thank you. Politics is my compulsion. I didn't choose it. It chose me and it chose all of us. Because in New India, a new kind of politics is deciding what we eat, what we wear when we enter the classroom, what films we watch, who we date, who we marry, what jobs we're allowed to do if we're vegetable vendors or fruit vendors, how we party, hell, how we potty, because there is a great obsession with urination and gobar and all amongst this crowd. So we better wake up to what politics is doing to us, because it has already chosen us. And that is why when people say to me, don't do politics, let your work speak. I mean, sure, I have no work left and politics has already decided that for me. Oftentimes in the comment section of my these posts and tweets or anything that I write or post or say or wherever my name appears, there will always be a comment, mostly in Hindi, which will say that देखो तुम अच्छी एक्टर हो, तुम्हारा काम है एक्टिंग करना, तुम बस वही करो, ज़्यादा फैलो मत. Which means, look, you are a fairly okay actor, your job is to act, you just do that, you don't spread yourself much. And it always, it makes me think that do we as people, these kind of comments, I mean, what are they really saying, right? They want all of us to be bound to our chosen paid jobs and not engage with, open our mouth or say anything about anything else. So this really begs the question in my head, and I was having this conversation this morning with a dear friend of mine, that do we as Indians, as a society, do we even understand the concept of citizenry, of being a citizen? Yes, we understand the concept of being a political citizenry in as much as we cast our vote. That is an idea that is deeply popular, it's gone everywhere, it's fully democratized, it is everywhere. But beyond that, do we have any understanding of what it means to be a citizen? I don't think we do. Do we value it? Most certainly not. Because look at the small freedoms that have been taken away from us, slowly but surely. I don't know how many, y'all are lucky you're in Kerala, but I don't know when you go out of Kerala, you will realize that the menu from which you order in a restaurant has changed. Your choice of food may no longer be available. There are people who are literally dying in India today because the tiffin that they were carrying, the biryani they were carrying, the meat may have resembled beef. It's 2022. I'm saying this because I don't think the fault is of the Indian people in a generic sense. I don't think that we have spent, our national movement was, largely speaking, it was not just a movement for political freedom. Most of our freedom fighters were very invested in the idea of transforming India as a society. They were, all of them, across from north to south, most of our major freedom fighters were also, they were thinkers, they were writers, they were thoughtful people. They were spending time thinking about the problems in our society, how to change it. That is reflected in our constitution. Our constitution is not just a set of do's and don'ts and this can happen and that can't happen and this is what you have and that is what you don't have. It actually has space for a vision to become something else, to become something better. I don't think we know that. I don't think we care for it. And I think that we have been very, very lazy as, and I'm saying this not to blame any one political party or one leader or one set of people or one community. I think that across the board, we have been lazy. And I think that that burden and that responsibility should lie on those group of Indians who don't have the pressure of earning that daily wage, that if you don't earn on that day, you will not have that meal at the end of the day. So those of us who don't have that pressure, this burden really lies on us. We were too accommodating. We were too adjusting. We were too understanding. We didn't make enough noise. We didn't say no loud enough. And as a result, we are now in a state where in India, and I'm not saying this for drama, I'm saying this because I grapple with this every single day, because I swear to God, every single day I think whether I should finally delete my damn Twitter account or not. And just delete all my social media presence, and why the hell do I even speak, and I don't want to look at the newspaper. I'm literally scared of the news. I think that we have reached a point in this country where it is impossible to have a conscience. It really is. Just think about it. Think about what we're teaching our children at home, the good, stellar values that all parents give their children at home. Be kind, be good, be helpful. If someone gets hurt, help them. If you see someone fall, help them. If you see, if you're eating food and you see somebody, share that food with someone. Just be decent people. And look at the world we have allowed to develop around us, and the world we have voted in very large victory margins. The moment the child steps out into school, into a job, into college, what will concerned parents be telling them? Don't say anything.
It's not your business. Just, why should you care? It's not your business. Is it happening to you? It's not happening to just suddenly the values become like an accounts ledger of profit and loss. You know, if you say something, there'll be this much of a loss in your exams, in your marks, in your job, in your... In 2016, there was a 15-year-old boy, Junaid, who was lynched to death in a train compartment over a seat fight. He was going home for Eid. This happened, I think, somewhere around Ghaziabad. My question is not who were those 6 people who thrashed him so much that he eventually died. My question is, how many people does a crowded train bogie fit in this country? 100? 75? There's 75 numbers on the seats. 72, 75? 100%, 10 more extra people must have been sitting there without tickets. Not one of those almost 100 people said no. And there is no clearer depiction and reflection of who we are. And so, when people say to me, then why don't you stop? Why don't you stop speaking out? Or say to any of us, all of us, I'm sure you're all doing it, and I'm not alone in speaking out. A lot of very brave, idealistic people are speaking out, and they are suffering for it. People are going to jail. At least I haven't gone to jail yet. So I don't want to act like I'm some lone crusader in this. Not at all. There are enough people in India. But I just want to say this now to reaffirm and reiterate and also answer the question that I get asked every day. Why do you do it? Why do you speak out? Why do you say no? It's so dangerous. It's so unwise. You're ruining your career. You have ruined your career. You know, producers are scared of you. People, it affects everyone else's life. People who depend on you for work, depend on you for salary. It's all true. I'm a freaking nuisance to everyone who is in my life. So why do I do it? Why do any of us do it? We do it because we are not going to be able to be free artists in this world. We are not going to be able to be the citizens we ought to be in this world. But if we don't raise our voice, we will not even be at a very basic level human beings anymore. And that is the only reason anyone should speak. Artist, citizen, or just a regular person. Thank you so much.